Her first Zoom meeting?
Second one. He had to sit in on her mama's nurse at Pavilion.
Yeah.
Through the whole COVID and no daycare, and her other grandma working too, so that left me and left, so she didn't dare. There you go. Yeah, bye-bye.
Yeah, hi.
We're short staffed, so I'm like, I'm it. So she's a sweetie.
Yeah.
You like that? You like that, don't you?
She's smiling.
Likes being on camera. You're him. All right. I have to go play. Okay. It's coffee though, okay? Usually it's my cat. I think I've got my cat trapped. He likes to photobomb, but I have to block him. He can't stand me being on the computer.
Yeah, they have a way of showing up at the wrong time.
They do.
What?
Somebody else came on, but I can't see who it is.
Says
Okay,
John.
We're ready to start, and we've gone live with YouTube, so welcome everyone. And I'd like to see if there's any objection to anything on the agenda, or if anybody wants to add anything on the agenda. As you know, the Housing Action Committee accepts items by consensus, so that's what we'll do if you're satisfied with the agenda.
Do you want me to just explain what I have here?
Yeah, do you want to,
The Bayview project?
Lois, do you want to do that under comments at the end, member comments, or do you want it as an actual
Wherever you want me to put it,
item?
doesn't really matter.
Well, why don't we put it as number 3 under discussion and action? So for members, we're going to add under 3 discussion action, the Bayview project in Suttons Bay.
Okay.
And Lois Bailey will introduce that and go over it a little bit for everyone. Is there anything else? And by the way, if you're on Zoom, if you could raise your hand so that we know you want to be, that you want to talk, we'll acknowledge you. Okay, then we'll take it that the agenda has been approved by consensus with the addition of item 3, Bayview project in Suttons Bay under discussion and action item. Public comment, excuse me, I jumped over staff comments. Staff comments, real quickly, the representative for Housing North is going to be Sharon O'Reilly. She is going to take over for Frank. Frank, thank you for the time that you spent on Housing North. And Sharon has stepped forward and said that she would be the representative. And I believe that that will be confirmed by the Housing North Board sometime this week. And then in August at the Executive Committee meeting, which is the second Tuesday in August starting at 9 a.m., the Housing Action Committee members will do a presentation to the County Board on the role of government in housing as well as the checklist. And that will be Frank Clements, Sharon O'Reilly, and Lois Bailey. The meeting starts at 9 o'clock. At this time, I don't know where on the agenda that item might be, but I'm assuming it's going to be fairly close to the top of the meeting. And then the forum piece on housing was submitted to the Leelanau Enterprise. They replied back. We were over a little bit on the words. They're very strict on the number of words you can have in the forum piece. So I went through and just kind of clipped a few things out here and there to get within their approved number of words that they will accept, and now we're just waiting for it to get published. Does anybody have any questions on any of those 3 items that I just went over? Okay, we'll move on. Public comment. If there's any public that wants to make a comment at this time, the phone number to call is 256-8109. That's 256-8109, and you can call in at this time, or we have another public comment at the end of the meeting if you'd like to make any comment at that time. All right, hearing nothing at this time, I'll turn it over to Yarrow Brown. She is Executive Director at Housing North, and she's going to give us a presentation followed by Q&A. I did send out a PDF of her presentation about an hour or so ago. I'm not sure if you received it or not, but hopefully Yarrow will be able to share her screen and we can follow along with that document. So take it away, Yarrow.
It looks like it's disabled, Sharon, or Trudy, host disabled participant screen sharing.
Okay, we have Laurel on the other end who is watching this, so let's give it a moment and see if she can click the appropriate button to allow you to use your screen.
Okay.
Welcome, Sharon. I see you have joined us. Okay, I'm going to pop in the other room here and check with Laurel and see if she can get that shared. Thank you.
Okay.
There. Okay. Did everybody get a copy of the PDF? Because other, you know, we can go through it page by page if we have it.
I haven't succeeded in being able to share screen with Zoom with anything I have otherwise on the computer. It seems to be very greedy that way.
Okay. Yeah, if I go off screen, I'm going to go to my mail-in box so I can follow through on the PDF. So I'll be off screen, but I'll be able to hear everything.
Yeah, I printed mine out so I can follow it print wise.
Well, that's where
Unfortunately, I don't have a printer in Denver.
So I think this is the same presentation
I'll.
that Housing North did. Did you see it?
Yeah, I was just looking at it.
But you've already seen this, so you've heard the presentation.
I don't know, I just got this one up
Yeah,
for whatever was emailed out.
yeah.
I can just go ahead and get started. It seems like it's not working and I can go off the PDF if everybody's ready, or I can wait for Trudy to get back.
Okay, this is Trudy. They are working on it to see if they can get the screen shared at our end, but Yarrow, if you want to go ahead and get started, that would be great.
Oh, it looks like I am the host. Okay. So I'm gonna find the right one. Okay. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna do it so I can't see myself talking. All right. So thank you for having me. This is pleasure to be here. This is kind of my first official, I guess, presentation as the Housing North Executive Director. I think most of you know about us, but we were formed about a year and a half ago, and we officially became a nonprofit in March of this year, right when everything sort of changed in our world with COVID-19. And our mission is to create pathways and partnerships for housing in Northwest Michigan. Let's see if I can get this to go down. Okay, here we go. Today, I'm just going to talk a little bit about our update you on our legislative initiatives, go over a very pared down version of the webinar we have, and just go over some of those tools, and then talk a little bit about some partnership opportunities, and then ask if you have any questions. As most of you know, we cover a 10-county region, so Leelanau being one of those counties, and we are founded by the Fry Foundation, Networks Northwest, and Rotary Charities. And our goal is to raise awareness, advocacy, capacity, and resources around housing in Northwest Michigan. Today, I guess I just want to thank you in advance. I don't know that this has quite happened, but one of the ways you can support us is by endorsing the Homes for Our Future campaign by adopting a resolution. There's an example of that on our website. And also just to thank you for your current involved in advocating for housing in your community. I think you are one of the more active groups that I know about, going around to each of the townships and trying to get them to visit the Housing Ready checklist. So I just wanted to thank you for your work. And the other thing, I think most of you are aware, as Sarah gave an in-depth presentation a few months ago, or maybe 6 months ago, but we do have a communication toolkit on our website. It's a 19-page document. We're also working on some pared down versions of that, but you can find it on our website, and it's useful tool as you go around and talk to people in the community. Some of our policy pillars, which Sarah did give a webinar on this a month or so ago, are to advocate for tax incentives for affordable housing or housing in general. We've been advocating for the MISHDA qualified allocation plan, and I believe some of our and yours probably input has been incorporated in the QAP. And also looking at different funding streams and ways that we can increase interest in funding housing projects in the area in Northwest Michigan. Just going to highlight a few that we've been getting traction on, and we have on our website a list of them where you can read more in detail. But we are right now working on a draft that is being sponsored by Tristan Cole, and it's hopefully going to be introduced to the committee in September. That would grant a homestead credit to anybody who decides to put their property on as a long-term rental for workforce housing. We're also working with Congressman Bergman on the Affordable Housing Credit Improvement Act, which it would expand and enhance resources for affordable housing, the Affordable Housing Tax Credit Program. And we're also working with Tristan Cole on another bill that will help give a 50% tax credit to employers who are putting housing on the ground or housing projects. So those are just a few. If you want to learn more, you can reach out to me or Sarah Lucas, and we can talk more in depth on those with you. Just briefly, I want to talk about 3 tools that we talked about at our webinar recently, but one of them is our deed restriction program that right before I started in April, we accepted our first deed restriction in the city of Charlevoix. Steve Schnell is our Charlevoix County Housing Program Ready Director, and he started in March. And so he's our boots on the ground in Charlevoix, coordinating 3 housing programs or housing action groups and trying to get projects going in Charlevoix County. This was a response to the challenge that they have in Charlevoix County, where there's a growing percentage of summer homes and vacation rentals. And this is a partnership between the city of Charlevoix, Housing North, and the Community Foundation, with a goal that that there will be more housing that will always be a primary residence and available for the workforce. So the funding for this came through a private donation to the Charlevoix Community Foundation. To steward this, we are the deed holder. We hold the deed restriction, and it will be stewarded by the Housing North staff. And the annual compliance will involve annual monitoring, and enforcement could include efforts by the city as a third-party beneficiary. We're working out the details of an agreement with the city right now. This is the first project. As I said, it started in April of 2020, or we accepted it in April. It was formerly a church, and it's slated to become a 3-unit apartment building. The rental units must be the primary residence. And the payment worked out to be about 50% of the purchase price. And the project won't actually start, the construction won't actually start until spring of 2020. So this is a new tool that we're exploring, and we'll be developing it as communities would like to see this employed in their community, and if we have the resources to do so. Another tool we just wanted to touch on is the community land trust model. And I don't know how many of you are aware that we do have a community land trust in Northwest Michigan, covering 3 of the counties in our 10-county region, but it does not cover Leelanau County, unfortunately. And just to give a little background on this, I'm not going to go into much detail, but CLTs typically, they're nonprofit community-based organizations designed to ensure community stewardship of the land. They can be used for many types of development, but usually are used to ensure long-term affordability. So this just kind of shows a traditional purchase mechanism compared to the CLT, where the ownership of the land is actually separated from the buildings that it sits on. The CLT retains the ownership of the land and then leases it to the homeowner. So a typical scenario for affordable housing would look as though like this, where the CLT purchases the land on it with homes already on it, or develops the home. the individual would purchase the house, but not the land. And it makes the purchase price more affordable because the homeowner's not actually is only buying the house and not the land. And you can also get additional grants to further reduce the purchase price. This is a model that the Northern Homes Community Land Development Corporation uses. And then the homeowner would lease the land from the CLT long-term, often 99 years, on a renewable ground lease. And there are examples of these ground leases on Grounded Solutions, and I believe Northern Homes as an example on their website. This is just, I'm going to take a sip of water here, but this is just an example of how the numbers would work. Recently with a property that did change hands. So basically the agreement or the ground lease stipulates that the lessee takes home, or the person owning the home, 22% of the resale value. And you can see how it appraised at 220,000 in 2020, but they sold it for 105,000. So it helps retain affordability and build equity in the property for the owner. And the owner can choose to sell. The CLT retains the right to repurchase the structure, and then the cost of land and shared equity is forever remains within the community land trust. So I'm just going over these quickly. We do have some links to more information on our website, and we'll have more at the Housing Summit. The next tool I'm going to talk about briefly is just partnerships with land banks and the idea of a housing conservancy or housing fund. I know Leelanau County does have a land bank authority, and that is a tool that we can use in many ways for housing projects. One of the organizations that came and spoke last year at the Housing Summit, I believe, and a model that we're looking at is the idea of an urban land conservancy, which is a nonprofit that has affordable, specifically works in Denver community, but they strategically acquire property, hold it until there are partners and funding available, and then they are able to find developers. And in this case, the Urban Land Conservancy, I believe, acts as both a developer and a community land trust and a financial partner. So one of the other tools that we're looking at is the idea of a regional or local housing fund that can help offset some of the pre-development costs and also allow deals and projects to move a little bit quicker. These local funds can fill gaps in financing and kind of help with some of the specific needs in each of the communities. These are some of the partners and sort of different groups that we've been working with and talking with. Community development finance institutions, we've been talking a lot with MEDC, and also thinking about the ways both philanthropy and employers can be involved in contributing and partnering with this housing fund idea. Of course, you need many financial partners, and this is just sort of an idea that we are looking at and would love input, but basically it would be a vehicle through partnering with community foundations as a way to do some non-traditional investment and facilitate land donations, acquisitions, and partnerships to get housing projects on the ground quickly. We also are thinking about this idea as we think about all these tools, how you can bring them together in sort of this idea of like a housing conservancy and look at a hybrid model that would sort of employ all of these tools to be able to work in partnership with both land bank authorities, deed restriction programs, and existing community land trusts, or helping to facilitate possibly new land trusts if that's what the community needs. So the next steps that we're kind of exploring are, how do these partnerships with CDFIs work? How can we get them to work more in our community? Looking at our 10 county geographic need and considerations, and then how do we build capacity and the structure to sort of fund this, this program. At the end of our conservancy webinar that we just had, we did have a poll, and I wanted to just share a little bit about these poll results with you. One of them was, do you have a housing goal in your community that might benefit from a deed restriction? And 67% of the participants said yes. Many of them weren't sure, which means we do have to learn a little bit more and delve into this deeper. And when we asked which of these goals they thought would benefit, workforce benefit from a deed restriction tool or program, workforce housing was the one that popped out as the highest, with affordable housing and then year-round housing also being a consideration. We also asked if a community land trust is a tool they want to see developed or expanded in their community. 78% of the people said yes. And then when we looked at which one of the tools that we talked about in our webinar, do you want to learn more or talk about, the one that popped up the highest, and these are rated in 1, 2, 3 in order of I guess, the interest. The first was community land trust, the second was a housing fund, and the third was a deed restriction. So this is just kind of the toolbox that we're looking at Housing North to be able to help and looking for any input and feedback on what the community needs. Just wanted to touch a little bit on partnerships and how the different organizations and counties and governments can help us at Housing North and what support we need. You know, we're always looking for ways that we can increase awareness, education, and get involved in more legislative advocacy, opportunities for leadership and strategical organizational guidance, and being able to recognize your organization's participation in housing solutions. We've developed this structure that I'm going to go over with you a little bit about ways that people can financially support us. And I know Sarah mentioned this in some other meetings, but we have technical assistance that we can provide. And sort of, I can also email this to Trudy or anybody else interested, but there's just different tiers of partnership that we're looking at offering. And one of them would be to be a housing roundtable partner or a summit partner. And you would get, for your partnership, you would get promotion, recognition, and able to come to some of our events and webinars at no cost. So there would be different tiers that you could look at to support us. One of the other ways we're looking for support is for communities to adopt a housing ready resolution. And we're thinking a lot about this model that we have now in Charlevoix, and we just hired a part-time, we didn't, in partnership with the Little Traverse Bay Housing Partnership, hired a part-time person, 20 hours a week for 3 years for the Emmett County Housing Ready program. So we find that this is a program that seems to be successful, where we're having boots on the ground facilitating projects, and wondering if this is an interest in Leelanau County, if there would be a champion that might look to help fund this position, and if your group would be consider it as maybe a shared position with other counties such as Grand Traverse or Benzie County. And then before I wrap up, I just wanted to tell you about our next webinar that we're having, which is going to be on August 6th. And Ashley from the Northwest Michigan Coalition to End Homelessness will be sharing information on how housing and homelessness partners can work together to create the homes we need to end homelessness. And I'm sure you all got the email, but our 6th annual Northwest Michigan Housing Summit is going to be virtual this year, and it is going to be on October 20th to 22nd, and it'll be a 3-day series of webinars, and you'll get a save the date in the mail shortly. So thank you for listening and letting me take up your time, and I'm here to answer any questions that you might have.
Carol?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is Frank.
Hi, Frank.
You mentioned at the beginning about adopt the resolution.
Yes,
Do we have a copy of that resolution?
I can email it to you, but I don't know if you have it right now, but there's an example on our Homes for Our Future website.
Okay. I would hope that's something our group could look at and adopt for you. And Trudy, I know we've been talking about this, you know, being a, you know, before it was kind of characterized as a being a partner. I guess Tony called being a partner, the $500, and we're trying to figure out maybe ways that the county could help us with supporting the partnership. And I don't know where we're at, but I'd like to discuss that later on if we could.
Okay, Yarrow, I have a question.
Okay.
Okay, this is Melinda Lautner.
Hi, Melinda.
Hi. Have you talked, if this apply to what you're doing, or you can't help me, that's okay. I did want to discuss during this meeting at some point today, but I've had a couple of landlords approach me, and they're very upset, and they're really struggling right now with the order where they don't have, people who are renting their homes don't have to pay rent. So we have landlords that have not collected any rent for a number of months now. They don't know how much longer this is going to go on. And there's no relief for them. They have to continue to make their mortgage payments, etc. and they don't have that income they're depending on. My concern is that we're going to lose even more rentals in the county. I know of 2 homes nearby me that are sitting absolutely vacant, beautifully rentable homes. They're sitting vacant because the landlord the owner does just not want to go down that road again. So there doesn't seem to be a lot of rights for the landlords. There seems to be more for the renters, and this is just really become a big problem. So I don't know if there's anything you can help us with on that.
Not necessarily. I'm mostly hearing about programs for the people who, who are unable to pay their rent and, worried about getting evicted. But I can certainly try to email you some more resources as they come across my desk. I don't know if anybody, Tony, if you have anything, to add to that, but I hear what you're saying. And I know it is also tricky probably to want to think about putting your property up for long-term rental, especially if you're paying, pretty high taxes, and you can, possibly make more by having it be a short-term rental. So I think we're trying to advocate for some tax relief for people if they were to put their house on a long-term rental, that they would get either a break in some of the taxes, either 50%, 25%, or 100%, and be able to pay the homestead tax rate. So that's one thing we're working on. But I will look back at some of my notes and email and see if I can find anything out. I think my understanding is that the rent, that and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not that people are not going to have to still pay or owe that rent. It's not necessarily going to be forgiven, but they're given a break, right now. So they should be able to possibly get that. I don't know. Somebody could correct.
Oh, they'll never collect that. I can tell you, once a renter falls behind a month or 2, there is no money. I can just about guarantee that if they're not paying their rent now, they will not. They will be moving out, which is going to just make the problem even a greater problem for us, because now those people are going to be looking for homes to rent, and they're not going to have very good references. But I mean, that would be great. I would really hope that they would, especially if they've received a stimulus check, make up their rent to keep that landlord happy enough to keep that home as a rental. But they're not hopeful, I guess. That would be the best word. They're just not hopeful. But thank you.
This is John O'Neill. To Melinda's point, yeah, the rents don't go away. It's just a moratorium on evictions. But I think your expectation that many of those people will just move out is probably pretty realistic. One option for those landlords might be to qualify their homes as Section 8 rentals. Section 8 will pay, in the Section 8 rental, the tenant pays 30% of their income towards the rent, and then Section 8 pays the other portion. And that's pretty much a guaranteed source of income. And Section 8 is really pretty good about making sure people pay their portion of the rent. So that's just an option. And there's a huge shortage of Section 8 rentals in our county.
Yeah, it doesn't always work out for certain people, and long-term rental doesn't work out either. Some, they'll do a month to month because it works for them. Maybe for the home in the future, don't know what their plans are. There's a lot of different scenarios, but I appreciate that. It works where it works, but when it doesn't work, and it's bad. So we'll see.
Any other questions for Yarrow?
Yarrow, thank you. First of all, congratulations again, and appreciate your presentation. Can you clarify what Housing North's role is in the property in Petoskey? And then I have a follow-up, a different question after that.
Which property in Petoskey?
The one that I think you're acting as, I don't know if it's a fiduciary or you're acting as the holder of the deed somehow.
Oh, you're talking in Charlevoix?
Oh, okay.
Charlevoix County? Yeah, so that is just a deed restriction that we hold, and it hasn't been built yet. We aren't enforcing it yet because it's still in progress.
Okay.
Basically, that was a kind of a perfect scenario of an owner slash landlord who wanted to and was willing to participate in the program, and a donation from the community foundation. And we were asked to be the holder of the deed restriction. It's our only one, and we're still learning and trying to develop materials for that program. And that was a specific goal for the city of Charlevoix. So it can be used, there can be other versions of a deed restriction tool, but this one is specifically for the primary residence.
Are you also the developer of the new house?
No, we are not the developer. We are just the holder of the deed restriction. And so the landlord or the owner of the home will be working to, I think it's going to be 3 apartments, and the construction is set to happen in spring of 2021.
Oh, how cool. Excellent. The other question is the talk about community land trusts. Sorry, a truck just went by. We were quite active 10 years ago putting together a community land trust that fell apart when the property values dove. We had it in Benzie County and in Leelanau County, as well as Grand Traverse County. We found a lot of resistance on behalf of the buyers in terms of wanting to actually participate. That was one issue. So do you still see that? The second question is, are any of the land conservancies that are doing, open land conservation interested in stepping into the housing area?
So to your first question, that might be something to talk to Jane at Northern Homes about. So we do have, my understanding is theirs is very specific. Most of the homes that were built and put into the community land trust were pre-2008, before the market crash, but they are looking at different tools and models. And I think a lot of that if it's tied to affordability and certain grant programs, that can be kind of a sticking point, or there can be some issues there. And I need to learn a little bit more about the community land trust you spoke about and why it wasn't successful, but I would maybe reach out to Jane at Northern Homes and talk to her about that. My understanding is they only had 1 or 2 homes turnover, so they don't have a lot of experience in the resale part of it.
Okay.
And so, we'll just have to see. And, it's a tool that can either be expanded on, Jane that Northern Home may be willing to grow and expand the area. And a lot of community land trusts, it's really development specific. So it's around a particular city or project, based. And so one of the things we're looking at is, how do you do this on, say, a 10 county region? What does that look like so that you can be able to hold land like a land conservancy were, and be poised to decide what to do with that, maybe a little quicker than, say, a land bank authority or, some of the other programs out there. So we're learning, and we're looking at maybe having a feasibility study or business plan that would talk about what that would look like and how to fund it and then staff it. And so there's an organization called Burlington and Associates, and so they are the ones that actually helped Northern Homes community. They helped them start back about 20 years ago.
Is Mike Brown there?
Yes, and Michael Brown's the one we've been talking to. So the other piece of that is, to my understanding, most of the land conservancies aren't really into development per se. I think they might be open to talking about short-term partnerships, but most of their mission is about protecting land, and they don't want to deal with sort of structures or the housing side of it. But I have been having conversations. Obviously, my background is working with the Leelanau Conservancy. I've been talking to Derek Shields at the Little Traverse Conservancy, and even just ways there could maybe be a partnership opportunity, not necessarily them taking on housing, but being able to temporarily either hold land or work on a project that might have a multifaceted aspect of it. So, but you could call them too and kind of talk to them and find out. To my knowledge, that's not totally part of their mission right now.
On a different matter entirely, we're now in an official recession, and no one knows how long it will last. Have you any thought to how the present economic conditions affect the assumptions that were made in the housing needs studies that were done? That you're now, you haven't, the most recent ones?
We don't know. We need to wait to find out more and get through this. I mean, we just finished that study. I think it was like November of 2019.
Yeah.
We know things are going to be different for sure. But I think we just have to wait a little while until we do more studies. I also know that from what I've heard is the real estate market hasn't really slowed down, nor has the need for housing. So we only anticipate that there's going to be a greater need and quicker. But that's all I know, you know.
We miss you as a neighbor.
Thanks, John.
Yarrow, I have a question. You mentioned Emmett County Housing Ready Program, funding the position. As you probably know, in Leelanau County, we have the checklist, and we've been going out to the various planning commissions, township and villages. Can you explain a little bit more what that position is going to do differently than what we've been doing?
Well, it would be doing pretty much what you guys are doing, but it would be a staff, a staff person doing it, I guess, instead. But it would also be, it can be what you want it to be. Essentially, in Emmett County, this person, and it's similar, it's a volunteer partnership that wanted somebody on the ground to start putting actually deals together and get projects moving, as well as help raise awareness and do advocacy work about what they're doing. So they came up with a partnership between the Community Foundation and then the Fry Foundation to fund that part-time position. And that was just a real goal. Initially, we were hoping it would be full-time and possibly staffed, through Housing North. There were some different scenarios, but really what it ended up being is a contract position, part-time, and they're basically facilitated through the partnership. So taking their action plan and trying to implement it. She did just start today officially, so we're still learning, about everything that she will do. But in Charlevoix, it's very different in the sense of Steve is coordinating 3 housing action groups and doing something very, very similar, but it's I guess full-time and a little bit more complex in that role.
If we want to do something similar to carry on what we've been doing and going back and regrouping with the original groups or whatever we decide to do you think there'd be support from some of the foundations to try to fund a part-time position in Leelanau County?
I think it's quite possible. And I also think, like I put on my slide, thinking about possibly a shared position with another county, doing some similar work is something we're open to. I know Grand Traverse County pre-COVID, had some money set aside in a grant that they were going to go for to fund a position there too. So it's certainly a model that we think will be successful, and we want to help promote as sort of the boots on the ground, doing the project work that I can't be doing in, every one of the 10 counties.
Sure. Yeah, I think what we found is when we started our program, our checklist wasn't fully developed, and as we progressed, it got more developed. And then a lot of the agencies we talked to were kind of thinking about it, and perhaps if we went back to kind of ask them what they're doing now or how we can help them further, I think that would be something this position could help with.
Yeah, definitely. I know it's a little sensitive, right now to be asking for money, in certain ways, but also Manistee is still interested. And we know, a lot of different counties want to see the momentum going on housing. So it's worth to keep the conversation going and seeing how Housing North can help. For sure.
Thank you.
Okay, any final questions for Yarrow? Yarrow, thank you very much for your presentation and sending along that PDF of the document. That was really nice, and we'll include that in the minutes as well for anyone who was not able to participate in this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's move forward to our discussion action items. Number 1 on the agenda, this is the final document, presentation to the county board, the role of government in housing. It's on pages 2 and 3 of your agenda packet. And so what I did is just incorporated all the changes that were discussed at the last meeting. Those were the final changes. Of course, this has been updated several times over the last 6 to 8 months or so. Change the date on the bottom to today's date of this meeting, and then this would be the document that would be presented to the county board at the executive committee meeting, and I think the checklist would also be presented. And keep in mind that this could still evolve some. The county board may have feedback on this and some input or suggestions, and there may still be suggestions from other members before it's finalized. I know several months ago, Sarah Lucas had asked for a copy of this. She had a county that wanted to see it, but at that time I said, well, we haven't released it yet. We're still in draft format, and our own county board had not seen it. So after it's taken to the county board, if it's finalized at that point, then we certainly could share it. So at this time, I want to see if there was any final comments, if there's anything anyone thinks we should keep that, keep in the back of our mind as we move forward on this document, maybe any other changes or anything, or if you have any just final comments on the work in this document. Yeah, John, go ahead.
There. Well, again, I don't know that we'll get anywhere with this, but I really think it's important that we put in a line in there that says that we should pay attention to preservation of existing affordable homes and preserving their affordability. And that's implicit in some of the various options that Yarrow has presented to us. But in general, I think we should have a line in there saying that we need to pay attention to activities that will help promote preservation of existing affordable homes. Because if we start losing them, we're not going to build our way out of a housing crisis. It could be a simple sentence. It doesn't commit us to a particular thing. It just says that this is something important to pay attention to.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or suggestions? Does anybody have anything to add to what John has suggested? What I've done is I've typed it into the minutes for us to consider at a future time. I won't change this document at this time going forward to the August Executive Committee meeting unless this group wants the document changed. Okay, so let's move forward on to the next one. John, thank you for your comments. They've been noted in the minutes, and that's something that can still be discussed at a future time. The next item on the agenda is discussion of future steps and work for the Housing Action Committee and a timeline. And this may actually kind of flow into item 3 that was added, which is the Bayview project in Suttons Bay. So this is on your agenda today, and you've kind of seen this a few times over the last year or so, is some discussion on where is this group going, what further work needs to be done, what does the Housing Action Committee look like moving forward, or another group? Do we work more with Housing North and so forth? Just some questions for you to consider and kind of open up the discussion here today. So if someone would like to start, offer their suggestions or their input, that would be great.
So do you want to jump right into how this relates to Bayview? Because it seems to me that we've gone this far in all of our strategies, and maybe we need to put something on the table and just give it a test drive and see how it works, or find out what doesn't work. Oh, find out what doesn't work. Better?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So I've been watching the property that's for sale in Suttons Bay. The Bayview PUD was the old Frigid Foods development. Trudy mentioned Mr. Baldwin's project that didn't go, and that was actually property that was in the old condo area, Suttons Bay Yacht Club. So this is a parcel on the far north end of the newer annexed portion of Suttons Bay. It ends at Dumas Road, bounded on the east side by the Leelanau Trail. There are 3 parcels in this whole area for sale, and this one's the northernmost, so it has a separate property description number. With a PUD, one of the impediments to selling the property has been that it's been parceled up with so many different owners, and to alter the PUD, you have to get all the members, all the ownership members to agree to the changes. So that would be one challenge. The benefit is that it's an approved high-density area. When the Bayview project was first proposed and they needed sewer, and the sewer system in Suttons Bay was at capacity. The village negotiated to have them prepay 500 sewer hookups, which actually, that check was part of improving and expanding the sewer system in Suttons Bay. So this property comes with prepaid sewer hookups, and the PUD shows the sewer line in the design plan. So it's not built, of course, but you're a long ways down the road by having it on a piece of paper and saying, here's where it goes. So it just seems like there might be some, ways to look at things. There's a development in Elmwood that didn't go, which was a lot of units. So just ask that developer if he might be interested in another project in a different place that has more things already established. Anyway, that's what I'd like to maybe take a look at. See if the land bank can be utilized in buying this one part of the property.
Is that Lois?
Yes,
Lois, how many, how much room is there in there for how many units?
I didn't count them, but a lot.
I'm not quite sure what you're actually proposing. Are you proposing that we snag the property so that it can be developed later on, or are you?
Sure.
That,
If you get the land bank involved and buy the property, and so you mitigate the cost of the property and make it more affordable for a lower price housing.
are they currently current on their tax?
No, at least the last time I looked, they had not spent or had not paid the summer taxes of 2019.
So they've got, okay. But I mean, it wouldn't be fair to call this a distressed property, correct?
Well, it's only distressed because it hasn't been developed, I guess.
Has anyone like
that's some-
Habitat shown interest in this?
I'm not sure if anybody's shown any interest in it. It's more of the issue of it being tangled up with so many different owners that you have to get all of them at the table, and they all agree that they'll allow it to be changed out of PUD. And there was some animosity amongst a few people, so that's part of the problem.
So what specific steps are you proposing that we take now?
I'd like to sit down with John Gallagher and see if he thinks that the land bank can be useful in buying it. I'm trying to find the specific section here.
Is the land bank John's to work with, or is it Trudy's?
I'm a member of it. John is the chairman of the county's land bank.
Okay. What do you think of the prospects of that happening, Trudy?
Well, the land bank doesn't have a lot of money,
Right.
but it's certainly worth a discussion.
I see that there are 60 units drawn on here.
Could you repeat that, Lois, closer to the mic?
I see there are 60 units drawn in this section.
Would these be attached units or are they individual homes?
Condos, I
Condo.
think. Or there are 60 parcels now. I don't know how that was, I don't know if that shows more detail than 60 if I go through the other pages. It's been too long since I looked at this.
Do you want to make a resolution that we move that on to the land bank?
I think the bigger question is, do we want to have a role for this committee in championing individual pieces of property in the county for redevelopment as affordable housing or workforce housing? I would say there is. I think there are orphan properties or properties that have some sort of non-conforming issue or something that's going to keep the title from being perfect and clean, and this is one example.
Exactly.
That
It's
would
going to need somebody else
It's going
to.
to need an intermediary
Mhm.
to do some matchmaking between a developer and a piece of property that's going to deliver for the community. So I don't know if it's particularly this piece of property, but I think we've always had a conversation. We had this conversation a couple years ago that one of the activities we would do after our first project of educating zoning commissions and the planning commissions and what have you in the county itself, was thinking about the inventory of potential properties. And I think this would be one of them. So I don't have a problem having this conversation and bringing the land bank in. I think asking the simple questions, but I think we got to be clear that our role is not to necessarily see anything on this particular property, but any property we can get our hands on that could do that. This one might be an easy, low-hanging fruit, despite the obstacles we see. Once those are cleared, it could be an easy property to do and still have a developer make money.
And because it's got a lot of the things on our checklist checked off.
Like a sewer.
Sewer, yeah, sewer, close to a trail, close to where a beta route would be,
Yeah, that's right.
close to schools.
So I do see some potential on this property, and I think it would be worth having that exploration. And if anything else, some of the work that is done in a committee like this would be utilized, would have high utility for any kind of person coming later.
Well, or we'd find out if we have a flaw in our work product, that it just doesn't work.
Right.
That would be a learning tool, like a case study. You want me to propose that we move forward? I can do that?
Yep.
Yep, I would make a proposal that we go forward with sitting down with John Gallagher and looking at this project and seeing if there's a way forward.
Okay, so
Melinda?
because this group acts by consensus, Lois is proposing that the group moves forward sitting down with John Gallagher, chairman of the land bank, and see if there is a way forward on this particular piece of property.
Well, I support that except for the last part where you said this particular piece of property. Because I think we want to find out if the land bank can actually help in assisting in acquiring property that's not through tax reverted processes. So I think that's worth a conversation. And if the land bank held it, it would be tax exempt, which would be a big benefit during the development process as well. So I think there's some things to work out. So I like that, the concept of having a conversation, but not necessarily, we're basically trying to explore the land bank as a tool
Exactly.
for redevelopment. So with this
Discussion?
property,
Discussion?
Yes, Frank, go ahead.
Melinda's had her hands up. She wanted to.
Oh. Okay, I've been typing, so I didn't see that. Go ahead, Melinda.
Okay, thank you. I had a couple of questions. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear Lois very well. What was the price of this property?
I don't know that there's a price on just this parcel. They want to sell all of it together, but because it's a separate tax ID number, I think it's negotiable. Everything's always negotiable.
So basically it's a piece of property that's for sale at market value once because they know there really isn't a problem with the deed as far as title search and all that. They know who owns it, but there's just multiple people. Is that correct?
Well, the PUD was negotiated with one owner, and then over time it has been split up, and so there are multiple owners involved. And you
But
have
we
to
know
have-
that. I guess I just in the past, I'm just going to throw this out there. The parcels that the land bank that we've accepted to go forward for housing, we in the County Board of Commissioners have been parcels. I believe it was Tony that was just speaking like we spoke about. They've been pretty much low value property. And it was a very easy sell for the Board of Commissioners to say, yes, this makes a lot of sense to, rather than put this one on the market, let's do this for housing. And it's gone very well. But I guess I'd have to know the price of the property. I'm not going to ask the Board of Commissioners to buy this particular, or ask the land.
We're a long ways from asking anybody to buy it. I think it's more of an exploration about, would this qualify as something where the land bank could be involved?
But it's not in the land bank at this time. So I guess that's my point.
That's correct. However, the land bank does have the authority to purchase property outright that would not be a tax foreclosed property. We have not done that yet,
Yeah,
but they do have the authority to.
it's part of its basket of tools, because assume, like in urban areas, you know, parcels would come through the tax revert process to the land bank, and they would look and see if
Yes.
there's assembling larger pieces, they could buy some smaller pieces. I think what we're talking about is having a preliminary conversation, something like that, because there might be pieces that show up later on, you never know. I mean, having a PUD helps and hurts a piece of property.
Absolutely.
So, I would call that a cloud, so to speak, on the title, because it's not gonna be very clean to sell it
I-
off.
And would another developer, a conventional developer, be willing
Yeah, they
to
won't.
struggle with that? Probably not, yeah.
I just want to make the point that that's a big step now to ask the land bank to go out and purchase properties specifically for housing. I'm not quite sure the Board of Commissioners is there. Maybe
Oh,
they
I
are.
agree. You're right, I mean, nobody's there yet, I agree with you, but I do think, what we're trying to do is just trying to decide if the land bank in Leelanau County wants to do something like this, and what it needs to do to prepare for that, and that includes educating everybody, because it's not gonna be easy, but
No.
we could show them the example, how this would make sense for a third party to be, whether it's the land bank or not, maybe someone else, another entity might need to do it, but we can have that conversation.
Okay.
This is John. Kind of leapfrog off of what Tony just said. Certainly the land bank might be one option, but I think that it's important just to continue to explore, is this an appropriate property for someone to you know, get a hold of and develop. So I don't think it necessarily needs to be the land bank. It could be another nonprofit, or, you know, an entity created for this activity.
Maybe a church. I agree.
Do we want to put some kind of resolution forward to, you know, saying we want to continue to explore this and other similar possibilities?
Well, Lois has proposed that already.
Yeah, I agree with it.
And Tony at least had supported it, stating that we weren't gonna focus just on this one property. And then I think, Frank, did you have your hand up? You wanted to get on this discussion?
Yes, I did. Just a point of discussion, and I want to point out in our workup that we're going to give to the county commissioners here under number 4, marketing and promotion. Under B, we say work with local governments and Housing North to promote housing-ready community sites that are available in townships and villages to develop builders, investors, and housing providers. I'm going to give you an example. In Empire, there was a subdivision that was there for like 20 years, but it had all the infrastructure, it had all the roads, the sewers, etc. But it's sitting there dormant. Another individual and myself, who's on the REACH board, we realized that no one is coming to Empire to look at us as potential for housing. So we approached the developer, brought them to Empire, showed them what they called shovel-ready sites, which they wanted, not a greenfield site that they had to put in all the infrastructure. And now that has 10 new homes on it, 7 of which have been sold. They're also going to build probably about another 10 homes. So my point is that we have a role here. I think that we can do the same kind of thing. We can go to developers. I'm looking at, you know, REI, who gave up on their parcel in Elmwood. Would they indeed be familiar with this parcel? Could we entice them to come out and take a look at it? So it's something a little less than going right to the brownfield, but, you know, it gets down to who's going to do all this, contacting these developers and bringing them to Sutton's Bay to make them aware of this very good site that Lois has identified. In other words, is there something, you know, less than going directly to brownfield at this point?
Let me
Forgive my
toss
ignorance.
this out here. In one of my earlier emails to Yarrow Brown, I had asked if she has a list of developers. She does have some contacts. What about if Lois pursues this proposal with John Gallagher from the Land Bank and talks about, maybe not specifics, but uses an example, and then I'll touch base with Yarrow Brown and see about contacting some of those developers to look at
Why do we need to
sites
talk
here.
to, why do we need to talk to developers yet? I don't understand that.
Yeah, I know.
We're jumping right to,
I'm following up on what Frank had said, is that you're actually trying to bring the developers here to look at the sites.
I see it as getting property ready to perhaps do that, but I don't think we're anywhere near ready to talk to developers. A lot of times, if a developer gets involved, they could tie up a piece of property for a couple of years, until they exhaust doing their due diligence. They'll have these contracts signed and what have you.
Well, this parcel that Lois talked about, this has been available for some time, right?
Right, I don't think we need to talk to developers yet. We need to figure out if we can make this a better site by doing some of this legwork so that a better developer will come in and do that.
But what work is there? Because I guess the point is, it sounds like it's ready to go. It has PUD, it has sewer, they know who owns it, etc. What is the holdup for a developer then? What's
There's
the
a
hold-
reason they're not there. And I'm arguing that
exactly?
we
So
may
that
want to,
some developers and have them look at it. I think that property is ready, and that kind of goes back to my point. I don't think it's a brownfield. I don't think it's a land bank property. It's already done everything it should do. It's ready to go.
if you want market rate, perhaps, but you're not going to get affordable there unless you help make that deal happen. That's what we're talking about.
Then that-
I'm not here to help a regular developer make a lot of money on a piece of
Yeah,
property.
exactly.
So I'm about figuring out how do we get the property ready? Maybe we do legwork and then we can put out a package that says, if you do, 60 units, if you do 10 of them that are affordable, you will get this basket of goodies, including maybe holding the property in tax exempt status for 20 months or 24 months or something to that effect.
We ought to be going to the township and asking them to do that.
This is
Well-
the village.
The land bank has got that in the state law that it's allowed to do that. It can take gifts of land. It could do a lot of things. So a developer could buy it and give it to the land bank and said, I want you to hold this for a couple of years while I do my due diligence and I'm tax exempt, and get it back. And all he has to do in exchange for that is we get that money by doing the subsidy in the 6 or 10 units or whatever it might be that will be affordable. I'm just saying there's a lot to explore here. And I think I'm fine if you don't want to waste the time in the land bank, but at some point, that is a very robust state law that is not really being utilized here, which is not a criticism. I'm just saying that land banks in other parts of the state do a lot more.
And that's what I grabbed onto when I went to the land bank brownfield presentation that was here at the county building, and I thought, oh, they're not necessarily issues of pollution or tax foreclosed properties. There are other reasons to use this tool.
They are redevelopment tools.
Yeah.
Well, the example that Frank gave is, as Frank mentioned, they brought the developer in on that site. What was another step in that is the developer came before the land bank to see if we would help out on that project.
Yes.
So that they could put in a couple affordable units. They were willing to do that. However, after the land bank reviewed it a few times, it was not something that fell in line with the mission of the land bank because of the price point, and it wasn't like some of our other projects where the developer was also bringing something to the table. We wanted to see that. So they're still going forward with the development, but because Frank and someone else from Reach brought that developer in, they did end up contacting the land bank to see if we could assist with that and do a couple units there. So that could possibly happen again on any other property.
I have a question
Yeah,
for I have a question for Lois. Lois, you indicated that there were other owners involved and they had to be consulted. I'm not clear what that's about. I mean, are there changes that need to be made to the way PUDs are put together, or what?
You might want it released from the PUD in order to change the PUD to a different type of zoning, because the PUD is a hindrance to developing this property as it is right now. And there are 6 individual owners involved in
And,
this property. Some of them may be different parts of the Roth family in different ways.
and then are you saying that if there were changes made to the PUD, it would be more appropriate?
Yeah, it would be easier. Mhm.
Well, I
I can give you the whole story of the property up on the top where the surveyor owns the lots right in the center where the sewer water lines are for those abandoned houses. And so he was not happy with the Roth family, and so there's this big controversy. Well, so everybody's fighting with everybody. No one will agree, and they can't sell the property.
Frank, do you have a comment?
Yeah, Lois, I feel like I'm dropped in the middle of something that I don't really understand. And if I had a better understanding of the property and all these conditions, I think I'd be able to better, help, make some kind of comment on all this. I wondered if you could put together a package for us of the land, so we can look at it and
Do you
I
have a
just,
way of scanning some of these in?
Yeah, we
Oh,
can
you do?
scan all those, they'll end up in a small packet for everyone to look at, but at least they get the idea of the layout.
Lois, I agree with where you're going. It fits with our mission, the things we talked about, but it sounds like a very complicated piece that I think we all need to have more time looking at, and then I think we can have a better plan of action once we understand
I
it.
know it's complicated, but it looked like the potential was for more units. And so the simpler projects get you 10 units or less. This one has more rewards, but it's a little further in the weeds.
I'm going to suggest that if Lois can share that document with me, I'll get it scanned and we'll get some more information available for your next meeting. In the meantime, I don't see any issue with Lois talking with John about this. She's not committing anything on behalf of the Housing Action Committee, just trying to gather more information that would also be included in the packet for next month for you. And if there's no objection to that, I'll assume that's the way we're going to move forward on this particular item. And keep in mind, this is just for this one particular discussion on the agenda, was still discussion about the whole role of the Housing Action Committee and what you see yourself looking like as we move forward out of this year and even into next year's. Are you wrapping this committee up? Is there more work to be done? And so forth. I'm not hearing any objections, so we'll move forward with that direction.
Okay.
And then if anyone has input on what they see for the role of this committee as we move forward, and the reason I brought this up a couple times over the last year or so is this was a subcommittee of the County Planning Commission. So the County Planning Commission gets a report every month on what's going on with the Housing Action Committee. And I think when this started, there was probably the idea that this would go on for a year or so, and that there would be a final report and maybe some recommendations. But this group has been continuing on longer and doing other activities, which I think is good, doing the checklist, visiting the townships and villages and doing reports and so forth. But now, how do you see yourself moving forward? And that's where I wanted to see if we could get some discussion today. Frank?
Yeah, I guess in view of what Yarrow just shared with us, we didn't have the Housing North organization when we've been having these discussions. I think there's probably 4 or 5 big elements that she has put on the table for us that, you know, that's probably a role for us to take the Housing North ideas and bring them back to Leelanau County. And I guess what I would suggest is that perhaps 4 or 5 of us get together kind of on a sidebar and look at those and see if any of those would be of interest that we propose to the group, that we should start to pursue some of those as well. I just think there's some great things there, but you know, some of those items that Yarrow brought up, they need to be brought to the county and applied to our county. So I would hope that we could look at it from that perspective.
I would agree that we need to stay involved as a subcommittee of some kind, because I'd hate to see all this work just go into a study and go into a shelf and then not be acted on in any way. Suttons Bay Village was going to review the checklist supposedly this month, and then they canceled the meeting. It sort of frustrates me.
Yeah, and this is, oh, sorry, Lois.
It's okay, go ahead, sir.
Well, and this is Sharon, and my thought prior to the meeting was similar to Frank's, is we've got some areas identified by Housing North that I believe we can apply in a very positive manner to our county. So I think a smaller group looking at those topics and looking what we've already done and saying, okay, what can we bring home to use here in the county to improve the housing situation? So basically supporting what Frank said.
Trudy?
Yes, go ahead.
Just a question, I guess. Is a subcommittee appropriate? Because I think each subcommittee of a subcommittee would have to hold public meetings and,
Well, it's been a working group, Melinda,
yes.
with things done by consensus, so maybe I didn't state that correctly, but it's a working group from the planning commission. When the board set it up, they said, put it under the county planning commission.
Okay, so, but deliberating towards recommendation, so shouldn't that be like minutes and everything else? The rest?
Well, I do all the notes that I share, and we post all of our meetings, and you know, everything's public. Everything has been done by consensus by this group, which is something they decided to do in the very beginning.
Right. Okay, well, it just seems to me that maybe everybody should take, we've taken this presentation from Housing North, and I honestly think, I don't know if all that were in play. I don't think Housing North was here in the beginning of the Housing Action Committee. So they're on the right track. I like the presentation. We just got it at 2:15, and we've been through it once, but briefly I've got, or quickly I should say, I've got a lot more questions. So I'll be contacting you for a few answers. Because I want to get more information, I want a better understanding, but I think that we should all take time and read the presentation first, then maybe all get back together and discuss it and move forward as the whole group rather than just a couple people. I guess that's my thought. It's just do it for our regular process. And then as far as this, committee goes, if we're satisfied, we are at that point. We've, I think, been to all the townships with the checklist. Is there something we should add to those checklists? We can figure that out. As far as the inception or the original intent of the committee, we might be there. I don't know, but I think we should study Yarrow's presentation a little further first.
The only thing I want to add to the Housing North conversation is that the intent of Housing North was not to be sort of proscriptive from Housing North down to counties or whatever level of government. It works the other way too. There might be things that are needed or missing in our region that we need to go out and get, whether it be changes in state law or some sort of coordination among counties or different levels of government. So I don't think Housing North should be kind of any factor in our governance that we can bring forward what they're working on and see if we want to endorse or work on it. But at the same time, I know Housing North wants to be hearing what we need and what might be missing out there.
Yeah, I disagree. All those things are things we've never thought of. That the whole, the homestead exemptions, the deed restrictions, the conservancy. Those are things. Those are all three great tools. It sounds like right off the bat that we didn't do. They did. Brought down.
I don't think they're not done yet. I mean, they've got an advocacy page, but they've got a lot of work to do to change state law on a couple of things. A lot of these are just sort of ideas, but there could be more ideas that we haven't thought of yet. I'm just pointing out that it was never intended to be, this is a one-way street of conversation. It's supposed to go both ways.
Yeah, I get that.
Tony. I was just going to speak to that a little bit too and say a lot of, what we want to hear too is what are your goals? And I've been, this is my second meeting, but finding out what are some of your goals and then how we can help support those too. So what I presented is really just us delving into a few of the tools and learning about them and seeing how they can be applied. But your community might have some different goals or tools or want to share with us too. So yeah, definitely. Thank you, Tony, for that.
Yeah, Melinda, what I was referring to, we've done, that's how the housing ready checklist got done. We broke off into a small group and then we kind of were able to drill down on it and get a draft and then bring it back to the bigger committee. So that's the model that we've used in the past. And, if everybody wants to do it that way, that's fine. If we want to have a different technique, then that's fine too.
Okay, anything further on this topic? All right, we'll move down the agenda then. Under communication items is your meeting notes from June 15th. If there are no changes to those, we'll accept them by consensus of the group.
Agree.
I'm not hearing anything, so we'll accept those. Public comments, again, if there's any public comments for anyone who's waiting on the line, it's 256-8109. 256-8109. If anyone calls in while we're still in the meeting, we'll go ahead and take that. Let's move down to member comments.
This is Sharon. Since I came from another meeting and joined, I need a reminder of when the meeting is with the presentation to the county board.
It is the second Tuesday of August. The meeting will start at 9 a.m. in this room, and I will get you out the agenda as soon as it's available. I'm going to assume that you guys will be at the beginning part of the meeting. I don't know exactly what time, but I would say the beginning part of the meeting with your presentation.
And, okay, and who are we guys?
Oh, sorry. It is
You and me.
Sharon and Frank and Lois. And I'll send you some reminders as we get closer to that meeting and so forth. Sometimes the county board has, 2 or 3 different presentations at the beginning of a meeting, so
Understand.
you could start right away, or you could start at maybe 9:20 or something like that.
Okay, and so thank you. I apologize since I was late joining. I had missed the reminder, Trudy. Thank you.
Yep.
And Trudy, you said the executive committee or the whole board? I'm sorry.
No, it's the executive meeting.
Oh, executive meeting, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Which is the full board?
Yes, that's where they hear everything, make recommendation, and the following week is their regular meeting where they take final action on issues. So you'll be presenting during the day meeting.
Thank you.
Yep. Other member comments or maybe questions? Yeah, Frank?
I would like to get that resolution from Yarrow. Could that be, go to you, Trudy, and then be handed out to everyone just for review?
Yeah, agree,
Yeah,
thank you.
Yarrow, if you can send that to me, we'll put it in the packet for next month.
Yeah, and Trudy, I didn't realize that. Can I make public comment in this format or do I have to call in?
No, you can in this format, that's all
Oh,
right.
can I make a comment as a Leelanau County resident, not Housing North? I don't think this Housing Action Committee should go away. And I think that I know it was just maybe set up as temporary, but I think it probably is something you should consider keeping for a while because I do think it's vital to meet some of the needs in Leelanau County and to have a local group working on this and at least bringing the attention to the commissioners. So I guess I just wanted to say that as a resident, I'm grateful you guys exist and we do like to see, or I would like to see these in every county that we work in because I think they're necessary and I know it's a lot of work, but keep up the good work because we need it. So thank you.
You're here.
Okay, any other
Thank you.
comments? If not, we are going to go ahead and adjourn. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you all.
Thank you.
So Trudy, can you hear me? Trudy?
Can, but we're shutting down, John.
No, I understand that. Do I understand you're going to be sending the